This is The Changed Physician, episode 205. Welcome back to The Changed Physician. I am Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. And today, it's just a lovely, fun topic for us, I think.
Lovely, fun topic.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk about how, especially because in a recent episode, I talked about a place that changed me, but generally speaking, there is an impact that travel can have on us as individuals. And I think it'd be a great general topic because there's so many things I think it affects that I want you to take it over and guide us into how travel can change us.
Well, thank you. And this, it was interesting because we stepped on that episode, which was 204. And we talked about your experience in New Zealand. And as we were kind of going through it, one of the things that you had touched on was this chance to change location. Mm-hmm. And that is one of many things that are the importance of travel. So we talk about like vacation and travel is kind of this rest thing, and people will get their, if in the poor United States, where if we're lucky, we get, most people get 2 to 4 weeks if they can. That being able to leave where you are, and in many ways who you are, and to become at least even temporarily somebody else in a new place, provides kind of a reset for your brain. Mm-hmm. And the reason that kind of hit me when you mentioned it on the last episode about changing location is there's actually quite a bit of data when you're looking at habit, and if you kind of think about habits being automatic activity, mm-hmm. and change kind of being the antithesis of that, where you're introducing something that you have to be aware of if you're doing intentional change. Mm-hmm. One of the best ways that you can have a chance to really expose and break down all those automatic behaviors is to change location. Mm-hmm. So they recommend, actually, when it comes to like habit change and things, that you actually get away or try something new when you're gone. Mm-hmm. And if you repeat enough while you're gone, maybe that behavior will come back when you are returning to your new life. So that's one thing I want to talk about is in travel changes, is just the fact that changing your environment, and that may include those who are around you and things, provides an opportunity for you actually to develop, or at least become aware of new things, but certainly develop new habits and strategies if that's something that you're interested in. Yeah,
no, I think there's a sense. Well, I think there's a vulnerability feeling in general, like when it's so challenging to change that wired in process that's been going, the automatic things you're talking about, and it feels uncomfortable to try to change that in your same location. And sometimes, we talk about having people with you, the right person that can help you change, because maybe they're doing that habit already or whatever. But in a different environment, there's something about that shift. There's a vulnerability, but there's also the excitement of something new that's going on and the novelty. So it's almost like it opens a window of opportunity to insert or to step into another pattern. And so I think that's the beauty of that new environment, is that you have that chance if you take advantage of it. Of course, you have to be intentional. Right?
Well, that made me think about the difference between travel with companions and in solo travel. Right. Solo travel for someone, I'm technically an ambivert, but more on the introverted side of the introversion extroversion spectrum here. In solo travel, though, because I used to do a lot of solo traveling, like a lot. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily when before I got married, but after we got married, I was going to a lot of events and going to new things with people I had no idea who I was. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting how those travel experiences, being by yourself, when your bubble is down, nobody knows who you are. Mm-hmm. There's no sort of preconceived baggage or whatever. So you can sort of be whoever you want to be. Right. Or at least not trying to like being fake or anything, but you can, I've tried to talk about this with some people. If you are in a new environment and you're like potentially shy, I'm fairly shy. Nobody knows anything about you.
Right.
So there's a great opportunity to at least step up and introduce people to yourself to others, to kind of challenge that inhibition in new and different ways.
Right.
And that is that I would say from universal travel, like the solo travel, that has been one of the most positive things for me, is being more comfortable in new groups.
Right.
Yeah. And it's interesting also that how your individual kind of perspective, like have you ever traveled by yourself and then traveled with your husband again and seen how what the differences are?
Yeah, it's so interesting how you attend to the dynamics of your relationship. I would say that I'm fortunate. I think that's where our biggest strength is traveling together. Like that is our thing. Like I think we're awesome at traveling together, in the sense of how we interact with people. Yeah, I can't say the same for other people I've traveled with. I think there might.
Well, isn't that thing they said is if you're thinking about marrying someone,
Yeah.
take a trip with them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So my wife and I, before she was my wife, before we were even planning on getting married, we took a trip to the Yucatan Peninsula. And we were in medical school at the time, and basically we dropped into Playa del Carmen, which is nothing at all. We've never been back, but from what I hear, it's nothing. It's so overbuilt now. It was not overbuilt. They still had some like dirt. There's like one paved street and dirt street. It was much very, very local. And then we just navigated it. Like I had taken a couple quarters of Spanish that summer, and we were taking the buses and stuff. And it was really, it was interesting because we didn't kill each other. In fact, we had relatively, it was one of those things. It's like we traveled pretty well. And now sitting here reflecting on it, that definitely had an impact on why we're still together, because we continue, just like you said, to travel well. I think we tend to complement each other actually in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have one person might be more of the planner, the details, the technical stuff. Some people that might deal with interactions with trying to resolve conflicts or problems with bills or something, whatever it is. Like there's certain people, it's always part of a relationship is figuring out what your strengths are. And so there's always certain things you need to do as part of your trip planning and all the mechanics involved. So you kind of find your role there, not just like your roles in the home. You kind of figure that out too. But one thing I wanted to mention off some of what you were saying about going to a new place and changing is, for a lot of change, you said there's a lot of automaticity a lot of times that keeps us in this pattern, which is the least amount of energy needed. Like our brains want to find the most efficient way of existing or surviving or whatever it is, and not lend itself to too much thinking for every single decision. But something about travel, it forces you to, there's not a lot of automaticity. There's decisions along the way, beforehand, during it, and upon return that are required. And so that's part of the survival and to make it a successful trip. So I think it forces you to do the very thing that's uncomfortable for most people to do if they're in the same location.
Yeah. And that newness, you said about it in episode 204, that is novelty. So why does time go slower when everything's novel? Well, because it grabs your attention, and it actually pulls it in and makes you pulled you more into the moment. So that's another good reason for us to travel, is to experience novelty, which then sort of kind of slows down time a little bit, allows your brain to process new information, to see information, become aware of new information. Novelty. I'm just thinking about all this stuff, like, because just before this, kind of going back to the travel with your partner, I was like, oh, you could almost open like a therapist thing for people who are going to get married, because essentially what travel is it's an introduced stressor. Right? No matter, unless it's perfect and somebody else is planning everything for you and doing it all, you're putting yourselves into a stressful, now whether it's distress, DIS stress, or eustress, EU stress, the good stress, depends on how you're perceiving it. But it's an excellent opportunity to see how you respond to stress and how your partner responds to stress. And most importantly, how you and your partner respond in stress. So super, God, man, I'm like, we should open a business here and just like, we're going to have relationship travel adventures, where you minimize planning for it and then maybe throw them out and put some challenges in there to see whether they could. It'd be like, we should have our own reality show. Like, I'm trying to think of a fancy name, right? It'd be like, instead of The Biggest Loser, it would be like, don't, survive travel with your partner. I need a better word. So, what's going to happen at the end? Are they going to travel and become couples, or are they going to travel and say, see you later?
And then get a referral program to the Gottman Institute.
Gottman Institute. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's definitely good, there's effective, healthy ways of communicating. Not that anyone, I myself, I'm not perfect, and there's moments you kind of lose it. But for the most part, if you have love and respect for your partner, and I think you find a way to communicate and do things. I don't know. You want to keep it fun. You want to make it an enjoyable trip, and you find ways to resolve stuff.
Well, as you speak as a successful spouse traveler and pre-spouse traveler, right? So there's other people who might be like, oh my God, I couldn't travel with this person because they were all blah, blah, blah. Excellent time to know. Excellent time. You certainly want to know that before you're married, I would think.
Oh yeah. I would say it was just it was about a year after I met my current husband, who is, that I wanted to go on a trip, book the trip. So it was about a year that we actually took the trip. So didn't think about the reason I was doing it was for that. It was just, I wanted to go, damn it. So, and I'm like, I want to go for 5 weeks. We're doing it. Let's go. So
that's a long time with someone relatively new. Yeah. If you can survive 5 weeks with somebody and you're still interested when they come back, that's a very good sign.
Yeah. So. I mean, it's kind of have to come back together unless somehow, you ditch that person and they had to find their way back. But, they still got their ticket, I guess. So you have to sit next to them.
So another thing about how travel can change you, in a specific example of novelty, because the key things is novelty and sort of uncertainty that are associated with the travel experience. Most of the things that our brain is sort of primed to attend to. I would say it's food.
Oh yeah.
The opportunity to expose yourself to different foods. Me personally, the one that I'm really aware of and now attend to is predominantly fruits. Now, I should probably also do it with vegetables, because I'm sure there's vegetables that are local as well. But on that same trip that we were down in Mexico, it was my first exposure to a couple of fruits that I've never seen since. And it kind of made me, in this world of Amazon and being able to order everything, being able to order regional food types and or the foods that are indigenous to that area that's like a great opportunity to expose to these things that you're not going to get, if you go to the all-inclusive and maintain the bubble wherever you are, you're not going to get that chance.
Yeah, no, you have to create that. And the other thing is, it's not just different things, but when you think you're getting a different thing and it's just a different word for the same thing, like capsicum is red bell pepper or bell pepper in Australia. So when someone says capsicum, I'm like, what is on that pizza? Yeah. So is bell pepper. But yeah, you just learn the words they use for some of the same things, and then you discover new things. And I learned about dragon fruit and some of these other, things that I hadn't been exposed to. I don't think it was dragon fruit. There's another one. It's like a star fruit. But yeah, it is kind of cool it's another novelty in a way. So yeah.
Or new preparations, because I was just thinking capsicum. They're putting the pepper on. We've all put pepper, but most put pepper on their pizza. But when I was in Djibouti and we went to the pizza place there, which was European style, and that was my first experience where they were cooking. They put the egg on the pizza.
Mm.
So they crack an egg on your pizza, and people, you got to try it. And it's really good. I mean, that's the other thing that really, and I guess that comes down to is your tolerance, right?
Yeah.
Like I wasn't a horribly picky eater when I was growing up, but definitely there was like oh, that looks disgusting, I don't want to try it. And I am really averse. I don't like that statement anymore. Like when people say this is a new food, I'm never going to try that, that's gross. You are limiting. I mean, it's obvious if other people are eating it, generally it's not dangerous. You don't have to worry about poison or anything else out. And so rather than saying, hey, this is gross, why don't you go and say, hey, at least I'm willing to try, and that we have a trip coming up, and like, I'm excited to try haggis. What's haggis?
What's
It's
haggis?
sheep's liver stuffed with meat and barley. That's from Highlander, the old movie. That's what he said when Sean Connery asks the main character, like, haggis, what's haggis? It's sheep's stomach stuffed with meat and barley. And Sean Connery's character is like, well, what do you do with it? And he's like, you eat it. Ooh, how revolting. And but it's like the Scottish national dish, and I am looking forward to trying haggis because it's their Scottish national dish. It's not something that I'm used to, and maybe I'm gonna love this stuff. Because obviously there's a bunch of people do it. So your travel provides, again, the opportunity, if you're open enough, to explore things that you maybe think that you're not even gonna like.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I stop at is like eyeballs. Not
Why?
into testicles or eyeballs. Just
Have you tried them?
No, I have not. But the one I will never try, I don't want to eat anybody's eyeballs. So I'm not saying it wouldn't be good. It's just I start feeling like I want to throw up by the idea of eating them.
What if you couldn't? What if you didn't know they were eyeballs?
Well, then it's just going to happen, I guess. But if I see an eye looking at me on a dish, I can't. I would say I'm open to just about anything. I can understand people that just don't eat animal, period. And that's their cutoff regardless. But it's, eyeballs. No.
Have you been served a plate of eyeballs before?
No, but I've seen, things in jars before that don't look so
eyeball
good.
Jars?
Like different parts of,
I've never heard of eyeball jars.
Well, it's not like the whole eyeball. Like there's like multiple parts of like animals like floating in these things that you can eat, I guess, delicacies. I'm like, nope, I'll stop there. But
I would try it. I would definitely try it.
I'm willing to try
like it.
Just about anything except for overtly eye things. I can't do that.
Testicles make me laugh because where I grew up in northern Nevada, and we had a lot of sheep herders, and the sheep herders had this lambing ritual where they basically are castrating them, and so the lamb nuts was like a big deal. And they used to have this big thing called the nut feed, and it was a big, and I'm saying that because my grandfather would go. I never had the opportunity to go. This is going to sound so crazy, but so I've never had the opportunity to eat testicles. Yeah, and they're not easy to find. I don't know where you go in. You're gonna go and order some testicles,
Mountain oysters. There you go.
Rocky Mountain oysters, exactly. And I think those places that serve them are few and far between. So if you're listening and you know where I can find them, let me know, because I missed that opportunity when I was a youth, and I will go travel someplace to try them and see what the deal is.
Just deep fry them. It'll taste like chicken, right?
Yeah, you can deep fry anything, but
yeah. No, I think there's if you think about being conscious of or conscientious of not wasting an animal that's been slaughtered and for the benefit of nutrition, I can appreciate utilizing all parts of an animal. So when it comes to all those parts, I can see how from a survival standpoint, I think we just gotten so spoiled, we just kind of take the little parts that we like the most or whatever. But I think that's where the open-mindedness to things realize, okay, animal in the wild eats the whole animal. Well, not always. Sometimes they eat the gut, the belly, and whatever they find in there. I mean, it depends what kind of scavenger or animal it is, but you see things eating a whole, they're eating every part. They're eating any testicles that are on there. It doesn't matter. They're eat up the whole marsupial, whatever they're having, maybe a baby in there. I don't know. So, I think we, in our minds, create what we're okay with and comfortable with and what seems normal and safe. So I don't think it's any different than how we construct what's okay,
And that leads to the other part about travel is, again, taking down your bubble or not, because there are things that people do in other countries and other cultures that we may not be appreciative of or even aware of.
Yeah.
And if your reaction to that is, oh, that's gross, or ooh, that's disgusting. First of all, I would hope to God that you don't like broadcast that to whatever culture is, because I can see how that would be extraordinarily insulting.
Yeah.
Again, you are limiting yourself to the potential to try new experiences that could change you.
Yeah.
And again, if they're not dangerous, you're not eating poison, they're not having you do, something that's deadly or dangerous to you.
Yeah.
Then at least be willing. You don't have to do it, but at least be accepting and willing to try. I think that is because certainly my travel experiences, I've been very lucky in the experiences I have, is to be very open-minded when I go. And the more open-minded I am, the more those experiences seem to change me.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity. And again, if you're solo traveling, particularly, that's even better, because then you don't have anybody saying, ooh, don't eat the testicles,
Right.
Whatever the case may be. I can't believe you're doing that.
Yeah, I think you're more resistant to acceptance of what's in front of you when you have somebody else that's reinforcing your stuck ways.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, more tolerant, and not in a way that's like, having pity on people. Like there's just more of an acceptance of difference. I think I almost like that better. I mean, I have an intolerance of intolerance too, but I think we should be more willing to accept and understand, and not that you have to be that, like we all tailor ourselves in our lives the way we see fit, but at least engaging and understanding the culture and why things are different, or maybe why they appreciate that, or the symbolism behind that, or why they do that. I don't know. I think there's a lot of value to that.
Yeah, that made me think of again, kind of the intolerant traveler who hasn't taken down their bubble. Like if your gut reaction to everything, well, that's not how we do it in the United States.
Go home.
Yeah. Then you're not traveling. You really aren't.
Yeah.
You that's not traveling. That is, I don't know, right? Traveling the way that we're defining it. I'm trying to think, what would you call that when it's like going around from one edge of town to the other edge of your town, but you're certainly not getting the experience from that.
You're being a spoiled brat. Again.
Well, in another, putting yourself, so we've talked about kind of uncertainty in sort of that, an uncertain environment, which is inherently of stress, whether it's good or bad stress. Putting yourself in a new location that provides a sense of novelty and things. And then the other one is, if you put yourself in situations that are completely different than the environment that you grew in, it does have an opportunity to change your perspective. I'm a white male. I grew up in a vastly predominantly white area at the time, very, very little cultural diversity. And the first time, I'm trying to think, the first time I went to China, and then we went into like central China, and you are it, like you're the white person. That's a very, very different experience. Like it is profoundly different. And it gives you a perspective of what it feels like to be the outsider. Now, I had great experiences and everybody was super cool and I really enjoyed it. And obviously, but it's so nice. It gives you an appreciation of what it is to be an outsider. That I do wish more people had, yeah, it would be nice if more people had that kind of experience, And so put yourself out in those locations and stay safe always, but put yourself in those opportunities where you maybe you're the only person there of your skin color. Maybe you're only the person there of, I don't know, something. But
yeah, your accent.
Your accent. That's a big one. We went on a trip once with some of my wife's relatives, and they were doing some little thing. This was in Mexico, and they had like some banquety thing, and they were doing like a contest when they'd grab people from the audience, kind of a deal. And they grabbed our he's like basically my nephew, but they grabbed him up on stage, and they were doing a little thing, and they were asking where you were from. And again, we're in Mexico, and so this young child who's very smart, very wise, but they go, "Where are you from?" And he's like, "America." And the host goes, "Where are you right now?" Right. And I remember that because I was like, we oftentimes reflect that we're from America. America is really a geographic location.
Yeah.
And the Canadians are Americans. Americans, United States of America, Americans are Americans. Mexicans in Mexico are Americans because we all live in North America. You know?
They're just not United States citizens.
That just not the United States. And so it was very interesting because he called it out, and I've never been in an environment where that happened. And and that it did. It made me think differently. It opened up a level of awareness, and I wouldn't have had that if we hadn't been exposed. And most apparently that whoever, the guy doing this actually pointed that out. And I never, oh yeah, here we are. It's pretty arrogant to run around saying that we're Americans when there's a lot more Americans than just us, because it's a pretty big continent.
Right. We can definitely get kind of brainwashed, not the word I was looking for, but you definitely can. Well, yeah, I mean, that works too. I mean, you start identifying in that way and not realizing the breadth of how that applies to other people.
To be fair, it is hard to say, like, I guess you can say you're from the US, but it's hard. You're a USian. It's like it's hard to say, but I guess I think in the future I probably will say I'm from the States, or I'm from the United States, or I am blah.
Yeah, I heard the term of I hear a lot of people in Australia, and they'll say, "Oh, you're American," or something like that. My husband's like, "No, we're Canadian." We don't really want to be associated with, even though they think when they say American, it's US. We're gonna.
I think that is routine for a lot of for quite a few travelers who have a level of awareness of what overseas. Again, not all Americans, because obviously a lot of us travel, and I don't think we're awful, but the angry, or the what do you call that? Not the angry American traveler, but the horrible ugly American traveler. Man, that is not. That's a stereotype that's based in some degree of reality. Yeah.
No, there's just a lot of like straightforward curiosity when after Trump was pulled into office, like, dude, why'd you vote for him? We're like, doesn't mean we voted for him. Just because you have a president anyway. But it is kind of funny how I'm just curious next time we're there, like we might just have to say we're expats or oh yeah. Well, the problem is once you speak up, they know you're not from there originally.
Well, and here's the thing. Another way that exposure of kind of the ugly American and you being someplace else. Now, just imagine for people who are immigrating to our country, and if you ask them where they're from in some of those loaded terms.
Yeah.
So there was someone I did residency with who identified as Assyrian. Or I know people who identified as Persian. Assyrians, from my understanding, a large proportion of them were in Iraq, and Persians, generally Persia, a lot of them are identified from Iran. But rather than identify those states, they identify kind of this other kind of cultural heritage thing. And I could see why you would do that if you strongly identify with that, and or there's an inherent of bias. Based on all the news articles. So I think it gives you a little bit better opportunity to kind of take that perspective and maybe be less judgmental. Maybe someone said, I'm from Syria, or I'm from Somalia, or I'm trying to think of, in this day and age right now, I'm from Russia, would be a big one.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that would be like.
Yeah, painful.
Yeah.
I've spoken to one. Yeah, it's not easy, but
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess you want to bring it to a little close, or
sure. And so this is just a little episode on how travel changes you, kind of the two main mechanisms behind it, one of which is being moving you out of your comfort zone. So you're putting yourself into an environment of uncertainty because it is not known. We talked about how the power of that, particularly if you're traveling with someone who maybe you're interested in spending a long time relationship with, because it's a good, it's a stress test for the relationship, right? And instead of a treadmill stress, you're going to do a travel stress test. The other part being novelty and salience, how being in a new environment introduces all these new things. So time starts to change and allows yourself to have a little bit of awareness with it. Ultimately, so you can be aware of and potentially maintain some level of change your perspective, change your relationships, change your dynamic when you get back, and overall a positive experience if you want to be a changed physician.
That's right.
So with that, I'm just going to kind of end out and say, thank you for joining us for this episode. If you have any comments, questions, or just want to let us know something that has changed you, you can email me directly at drkevin@thechangedphysician.com. And until next time, stay well.
Take care.